So you want to grow a container garden but don't have any containers? Today we're going to talk about getting some ones for free. G'day there, I'm Dana from Piwokaka Valley Homestead, and I understand that a lot of people want to get into gardening this year, but for whatever reason you can't be gardening in the ground and you want to start a container garden, but getting or buying containers can be really expensive. So I have got a list of a bunch of free or really cheap ideas that you can use to grow plants in at your place. Now you probably noticed that I do this background a lot in my videos, and it's because staring at a camera when it is really bright out there is actually really difficult on your eyes, and this is one of the few places that gets shade at this time of day. We grow our garden in raised beds because our ground here is quite clayey, and I found that a raised bed was a much better way of us being able to add nutrients and stuff to the soil. The beds warm up a lot faster than they do if you grow straight in the ground, and they drain a lot better as well because we get a lot of rain, and all of those benefits also apply to containers. However, I must admit that when I grow things in containers, I do tend to forget to water them. So if you're going to be growing your vegetables in containers, it's a really good idea to set up some drip tape on a timer or something like that, or just make it part of your regular routine to make sure that those plants are getting water, because they do dry out a lot faster than something in the ground. Container gardens really do come in all sorts of shapes and sizes, and that is because they are all based on whatever containers you manage to get a hold of. You can use containers out of your kitchen as containers for growing food in. Different plants require different depths of containers, so some of your sort of shorter rooted plants like salad greens, lettuce, that sort of thing, radishes, they only need something that's about 4 inches or 10 centimeters deep. So that means you can use yogurt bottles and large ice cream containers, even bowls if that's what you want to do. And they don't need the huge amount of depth, so you can grow things just straight into those containers. If you're wanting to grow deeper rooted plants, things more like your carrots and those sorts of things that need the extra length for growing in, you need to be finding deeper containers obviously to grow those sorts of things in. However, there are some types of carrot that will grow just a little ball sort of size carrot, which are perfect if you do only have access to shallow containers. Another good thing you can use out of your kitchen is actually some of your larger bottles. Most of those really large bottles, you can cut the tops off and use that whole thing as a container to grow plants in. All you need to do is stab some drainage holes in the bottom so that the plant doesn't get waterlogged, and you can just use containers like that for growing all sorts of things in. Another thing you might have lying around the house are buckets that already have holes in them. If you have a bucket that has a hole in it, then it's completely useless as a bucket, but it does make an ideal planter. And if you want to buy some really cheap buckets, most big box stores sell them for around $1 each, and you can pick up decent buckets for that sort of price. And then you're going to want to put holes in them, so they're going to be a little bit useless for buckets, but they will be great for growing plants. Once you get to sort of a 9 litre, 2 gallon or thereabouts sort of size bucket, that's when you can start growing those sort of more tuber crops. So we grow New Zealand yam, also known as oca. They grow really well in buckets, so do potatoes. You can grow sweet potatoes in buckets. If you've got spare flexi tubs, you know, those big ones with the handles, even the bigger ones of those are really good. You'll get a decent crop of sweet potato out of some of those. Along the lines with buckets is if you go to your local bakery or the bakery at the local supermarket, often they will get their icing or a lot of their syrups, even some of their like glazed cherries, that sort of thing, all come in big plastic buckets that often they will just throw out. So if you happen to know someone that works in a bakery, or even if you just go and butter them up a little bit, you can probably pick up some of those buckets, if not for free, then for very reasonably priced. There's quite a few things that would be considered rubbish that you can also use, at least for a season or two, as containers for growing plants in. I have seen work boots and gum boots, or Wellingtons or rubber boots, whatever you want to call them, with strawberries growing out the top. I've even seen people cut the toes off them and plant a different something down the bottom. They make really good planters for herbs as well. Tires is a controversial one. For one thing, you'll need something to sit it on because it doesn't naturally have a bottom. But you can build up stacks of tires, and they can be really great for growing potatoes and that sort of thing in. I have a post I have a blog post all about growing potatoes in tyres, and I'll link to that down below for you. Some people are really concerned about chemicals leaching from tyres. The research that I've looked at has suggested that most of the tyre leaching happens while those tyres are new and they're on the road. But I'll leave that up to you whether you feel safe about growing your plants in those or not. If you have access to pellets and pellet wood, that can be a really good thing to create some planters out of. They may not last particularly long, but you will get a whole season out of them, and usually you can pick those up completely for free. So all they're going to take is that extra little bit of labour and a few nails to put them together, and you can make some really cool looking planters just with pellet wood. If you're part of Facebook freebie groups, or maybe even part of the Free Cycle network, that can be a really good place to sign up and just put a call out for plant pots in general. And you'll be amazed at how many people just have lying around that they'd be really willing to give you. This is also how I got all of my seed starting trays, those little cell trays that are sort of about yay big. That I start all my seeds in. I put a call out on our Free Cycle group, and so many people were like, you can have as many as you want, just come around and pick them up. So I did, and that's how I've got literally hundreds of those. So it's really worthwhile. If you're looking for something, by all means put it out there, and you'll be amazed at how many people are really willing to give you some. That's also how we got all our bricks. Now there are 3 other types of containers that you can get. Sometimes they do charge money for them. Sometimes people have paid money for them and then they've got a hole in them so they can't use them for whatever they're using them for now, which makes them a perfect opportunity to use them as a planter and to get them for free. Otherwise, sometimes you may need to pay a small amount of money to get them, but they do make really good planters. And they are the 20 litre or 5 gallon jerry cans, IBC totes or 1,000 litre water tanks, and the big blue barrels. Now all 3 of those are often basically industrial waste. Sometimes they have honey in them, sometimes they have detergent in them, sometimes they have oil in them. All sorts of different things come in them. Nothing that you can't give a good scrub and a good clean. They're often used in the food industry, and the containers are food safe. So you can give them a good scrub out, and then all you need to do with the barrels, you want to cut them in half. The IBC totes, you can decide whether you want to cut them in half or just cut the tops off them and make a really deep garden. Some people also use those when they don't have holes in them and the taps are still working as something to keep fish in if they're looking to do aquaponics or something like that. And the smaller barrels, especially if they have a smash in the top of them, you can just cut the tops off and use those as really effective containers to grow plants in. I hope that's been really helpful for you. If it has, hit the like button. I have a whole playlist on getting gardening going, getting started with gardening. And if you want to look at that, I'll put a link for it up here. And I've also got a really helpful book that I have put together all about getting a garden started right from scratch. And if you want to check that out, I'll put a link for it down below, and I'll probably put a link up the top as well for it. That's it from me. I will see you in the next one.